For USCFootball.com, Connor Morrissette and Chris Trevino, we're back here in front of Heritage Hall to recap USC's third day of fall camp. This is Instant Analysis. Chris, great to be with you once again.
Yeah, big day. First day at pads. A lot of energy out there and a beautiful Friday morning in LA. So always great to get out here.
It is always great to get out here. So today we were able to watch the full practice, but if you're new around here, we're not able to report on the full practice. So we're going to keep these observations to what we can report on, which is the first 15 minutes of practice, and then what was said after practice by Lincoln Riley and some of the players. The practice was open for us, as I said, and that's strictly for observations and just to help us get acclimated to this new roster. Unfortunately, not much we can share. Here's something we can share, though. The other day, I talked about how Harry Dalton really stood out to me coming out of the tunnel. Today, that guy was Jide Abasiri, Chris. He looks like he's been hitting the weights. He was wearing one of those Under Armour shirts, tight to the skin, and man, you could really see how hard he'd been working. Very impressed with his physique, and I thought he looked very good today during the viewing period of practice.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that came in as a freshman, spring enrollee, and he just pops, physically, from that physical standpoint, and he was always someone that needed more development. Pretty raw coming out, a 3-star prospect out of Minnesota, but the word is hard worker, and if he could get acclimated to college and playing, college defensive line quickly, he could help sooner rather than later. He ended up, playing some spot minutes and stepping up when the D-line had injuries, and he played a little bit out of position as a nose tackle. He's more of a defensive tackle, defensive end kind of position. I feel like he's going to be going into that Devin Tompkins kind of mold that can play D tackle and D end, and obviously he has experience in nose tackle last year. He's more natural there, but I think this year we're going to see a little bit more unlock with him just because he is playing a more natural position. And obviously they have the depth, so they don't need to rely on him heavily, but he is definitely fighting and looks like he's in place for that 2 deep right now, and could be a big season for 97 in terms of getting some sacks, getting some pressures, getting stuff like that. I think he only had like two tackles last year or something like that, so just kind of giving him what he could in the middle last year. This year maybe we're going to see some more stats from him just because, and he does look strong as ever, and obviously he's grown a lot.
We do our top 30 most important Trojans list before every season. We just came out with number 1. You'll have to go to the website to see who that was. And I don't have too many regrets about my rankings here a couple days into camp, but one guy who I was not as high on as I should have been was Jide Abasiri. It's clear that he's fitting in right now, and I think he's going to have a role. I was wondering, with all those defensive tackles, all those big guys in the middle, who's going to get phased out. Maybe that's Kobe Pepe. It's still so early in camp to say with 100% certainty who's getting phased out at this point. But I thought both those guys would be maybe down the depth chart a little bit. But Jide, it looks like he is coming on strong here, so that's been very impressive to see. So we walk into practice, Chris, and that first day they didn't really do too much returning stuff like with the punts and the kicks. But today they were back on schedule with that. And what really stood out to me, we're wondering, is Mekhi Lemon going to do kicks and punts? What's going to happen? They don't really have a lot of experience outside of Lemon at that spot. And when we talked during the spring after Zach Williams, the Utah transfer, came in, he was a name that we both said, I think it would make a lot of sense for him to return punts. He did it at Gardena Serra in high school, didn't really do it at Utah as a first-year guy. Lo and behold, he's returning punts today. DJ Jordan is in that mix, along with James Johnson, the true freshman, and Mekhi Lemon was going back and forth. If I was a betting man, I think Zach Williams might be that guy, that number 1 punt returner this year. You want Mekhi Lemon there, of course, but he's just so a little bit lower on the receiver depth chart who can still make a lot of plays. I think it might be Williams' job.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough, I don't want to say tough spot that USC is in trying to find a punt returner because you don't really want Mekhi Lemon doing all that. Obviously, he's an elite kick returner. He's an elite wide receiver. He's going to get a lot more snaps this season with a cut-down rotation. He's obviously one of the 2 alphas in that room, so he's going to be playing a lot. And you don't want to put a ton on him as moving into a more full-time starter role, full-time kick returner role. Remember, he took over that role halfway through the season. So to throw punt on him, he could probably do it, but again, you don't want to run him into the ground with all those reps and, potentially taking shots. So electric, you do want to see it, but you probably do want to take some of that off his plate. But they don't really have a ton of experienced options. Xavier Jordan, James Johnson, obviously redshirt freshman and a freshman, don't really want to put that on a freshman because punt returns, kind of one of the kick returns a little more easy. You get touchbacks and all that, but punt return, you could really see the bullets start to flying. You could really mess up on there. So Zacharias Williams, a little bit older, not the most experienced, but he is a little bit older, has some college snaps to his name. So that would be kind of an option in the middle, kind of a bigger, not as much speed as maybe those other guys, but secure hands, big bodied. I think he can make some moves. Well, maybe the flashiest, we'll see, but yeah, I think it could be a nice, solid option for USC. And one of the reasons why they brought him in, just to give some more options at the punt return.
If it's not Mackay, I would bet, like I said, that I think it would be Zach. So we'll see what Lincoln Riley chooses to do. It was interesting, Chris. Lincoln Riley was watching the punt return warm-ups like a hawk, along with Ryan Doherty, the special teams coach, and we don't really see a whole lot of Lincoln Riley watching those special teams drills during the media viewing period of practice. That stood out. There was one point where there was a muff punt, and it didn't go out of bounds. It landed right by the sideline, but then trickled in towards the goal line, and James Johnson was returning it, and Lincoln Riley said, look, it was a teaching moment. If you're alone, you got to pick that punt up so we don't get the ball inside the 1 yard line. Try to pick it up if you're by yourself. But if there are players around, obviously, then yell out, fire, 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 back away, back away. And then I think James Johnson kind of understood, okay, Riley's watching me. He went again, and then he muffed the next one. But the fact that he's in the mix there, he was such an electrifying return man in high school. I don't expect James Johnson to be doing that as a first-year guy, but I think it's significant that he's there as a first-year player for the future, and the fact that Lincoln Riley was overlooking him and just watching that whole situation, I thought that was unique.
Yeah, and I believe that's like the first muff or bobble that we've seen James Johnson have. Yeah. He's so natural and confident catching the ball, so it's always going to be one. Obviously, the big man's watching, a little more pressure, but yeah, I thought that was an interesting teaching moment, and the fact that, Lincoln Riley essentially watched the entire return period, and I talked with Ryan Doherty in the spring when we talked to the coaches after, had a one-on-one with him talking about a bunch of different things, and one of the things was returners, and he let me know that like Lincoln Riley, those are he picks those guys. I was kind of surprised by that. That was more Ryan Doherty thing, but Ryan Doherty does give his input in terms of returners, but it sounds like Lincoln Riley is the one who handpicks the returners or who he wants to see returning. So it makes sense that he was out there watching them. Got to get his information when he makes his picks for who's going to be out there. So it does make sense, and looks like Riley has another decision to make in terms of, who's going to fill out those critical return spots.
It's an area they don't have a lot of depth, so that's going to be a big battle. The last thing with the special teams, the kick return guys, it was Eli Sanders, Wayman Jordan, Josiah Zamora, and then Mackay Lemon was going back and forth. As I said, I imagine that's going to be Mackay and maybe Eli back there. Josiah Zamora was back there a lot too last season. Remember in the bowl game, he fielded that would-be fumble and ended up saving USC, a very underrated play from last season. Another guy who's been impressing, Chris, not a return man, Micah Benuelos, the offensive lineman. Lincoln Riley was asked about him after practice. He said, Micah's a guy we knew the least about because he'd been so hurt. He's always had talent. He's finally consistently getting reps in the spring, and that's carried over here into the fall. He's getting a lot of reps now. He's more confident. He has a lot of power. There is a lot to like. With DJ Wingfield's situation being up in the air, Micah Benuelos, it continues to sound like he's going to get a shot to play guard and be a starter this season. Seems like he's on the
center of the program. Didn't kind of work out that way. Kind of bounced around between center. Now is the spot for him. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Justin Dedich. He was the number 1 ranked center coming out of high school, but he didn't play center for like his first 4 years. Mainly focused on guard. Ended up having an impact at guard. Did play center at the end. Now he's in the NFL as a guard. So hey, it works out sometimes for these center guys that are kind of bouncing around the interior. Micah Benuelos, maybe the next guy. Watch this tape in high school, played left tackle in high school. He's nasty. He plays with a nasty edge, and that's kind of one of the big jumping points in the scouting report for him coming out. He's mean, and he can put some guys in the dirt, so excited to see what that looks like for him. On the interior, he's finally healthy. That's a huge part of his game, obviously, in getting on the field, taking the most of his opportunities, reps, and looks like, whatever happens with the Wingfield situation, Micah Benuelos is carving out, a role to help this team either potentially as a starter for whenever, or at the most looks like he's the guy who's they're going to try to get development as a 2 deep, especially in those first couple games.
If Wingfield isn't able to play this year, it sounds like right now it's 3 guys competing for 2 spots at those guard positions. Benuelos is one of them, Alani Noah, the returning starter from last season, and then Kalen Miller is a name that we continue to hear a lot about. I asked Lincoln Riley about Alani Noah and Kalen Miller after practice today, and he made it clear those guys are competing. It's a competition. No one who started last year automatically has a spot heading into this year. It seems like Elijah Page, of course, is going to be the left tackle, but there's still competition going going on in the middle of that offensive line. We all hope Wingfield gets cleared and can play, but if not, it's good to hear that there's competition and just not two guys, okay, we're down a man, we're just going to throw these guys in, that they're still competing in the middle of that depth chart, and that's encouraging.
It is encouraging, and it does help that you do have two non-Power 4 teams you're going to open with, so you can get those guys some good reps. Again, not Power 4, but again, you can give them full games essentially to get them up to speed before, actually going to the Big Ten. It's not like you need to give a guy an LSU rep in the Allegiant Stadium, all the attention on them. You can ease them in and hopefully build their confidence moving into obviously bigger games, road games, such and such. So it's going to be interesting, and those first two games will be critical for development, especially on the offensive line.
Another guy we're hearing good things about, true freshman defensive lineman Floyd Boucard in this deep room of defensive linemen. He's the name we continue to hear from his teammates. Cameron Fountain said, he's a younger guy, but he came in and still showed me some things. We heard that he has great footwork. That was what someone at the media day mentioned, another one of his peers. I don't know how big of an impact he can have in that first year just because there's so much depth, but he's clearly putting his best foot forward, and it's too early to say that he's a home run, of course. But Eric Henderson, I think, he found a guy here in Floyd Boucard. He's looked really good according to his teammates, and people are excited about him.
The Canadian?
Yes.
By way of
Miami.
Oklahoma to Oklahoma to Florida and now to California. Very well traveled. Former hockey player. Very interesting.
Hockey player?
Yeah, former hockey player. Very interesting.
What position?
Do not know.
Wow.
I'm going to guess. We can ask him when we eventually get to talk to him. But yeah, played hockey growing up in Canada. So very interesting. The foot skill, maybe that comes from hockey as well. But yeah, I mean, Devin Tompkins kind of signaled the radar for Floyd Boucard. I asked him during the media day, like, who's someone we're not talking about? He's like, I hate singling out guys, because all my teammates are great, but Floyd Boucard. You'd be talking about Floyd Boucard. So impressed with his foot speed and his dancing bear, essentially, for his size and how he can move. So Floyd Boucard, 88, number I wore when I was playing. So just not making comparisons, just putting it out there. But yeah, he's emerged. Obviously, Jakeem Stewart is the freshman defensive line we're all talking about. But let's circle Floyd Boucard as someone who maybe can kind of emerge, maybe play like a Jade Abasiri role and kind of move up as a freshman that can give them some time and some minutes at some point during the season, maybe even the back half of the year. But yeah, very talented freshman defensive line class, and sounds like a couple of those guys are going to have some impact this year.
You brought up Jakeem Stewart there. The first player out today, kicker punter Ryan Sayeri. The specialists usually come out first, but the first non-specialist today by himself, ready to go out there, get to work. Jakeem Stewart was that first player out today, and I buy into that. I try to tweet out the guys who come out first because I think that just shows the mindset that you have. You're ready to go, and Stewart, by all accounts, has put his best foot forward, and people are liking what they're seeing from him as well. And he's a guy who's probably a little ahead of Floyd Boucard, just as a higher ranked recruit and someone with more expectations. Jakeem Stewart is someone we could see on the 2 deep.
Oh, absolutely, and I would be shocked if he didn't get significant, not maybe starter reps, but significant playing time this season as a rotational piece, and maybe a starter down the line. We'll see what happens, but obviously a lot of talent, a lot of size, a lot of potential. But again, kind of a question mark because he's only played 1 year of high school football. It's just crazy to think about as someone that highly talented and skilled only have one, but that's just how it worked out for him. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, he's going to get some minutes this season. Yeah, we will be seeing number 4, aka Thanos, on the field.
Do you have any other practice stuff? Should we move on to what we heard after practice? Just want to give you the floor if you have anything else.
Off the top, I don't think I have anything. Rob Ryan, not as much cursing today. The key word was violence.
Yes.
Violence was his word. I heard it maybe 100 times from him. They were doing, obviously first day at Pats, they're doing a little more tackling, a thud day, so they were getting those guys ready for those team periods and stuff. So violence, he wanted more violence, and obviously I know USC fans are going to love hearing that, especially obviously from the linebacker group.
Yeah, they will absolutely love hearing that. Let's get into what Riley said after practice. We talked a little bit about some of the earlier stuff. He was asked about DJ Wingfield's situation, and of course he can't comment on a player suing the NCAA, but he can comment on his state of mind. And he said Wingfield's not doing too well. This has been a really tough situation for him, which is understandable. You go into the portal, you think you got another year, and then all of a sudden the rug is pulled out from under you, and you got to take this thing to court, and you can't practice right now while it's being taken care of behind the scenes. No one really knows what's going to happen moving forward. I talked to someone who studies this who didn't give me the best report. This person said the judges have been really inconsistent, which might be a good thing for Wingfield, but the precedent based on the Sherman Antitrust Act might not be in Wingfield's favor. So hopefully USC gets some good news with that, but understandably it sounds like DJ Wingfield's not doing too well, and I don't blame him at all. It's a very unfortunate situation, very sad for the kid. He felt like he had one more year, and he might not get that.
Yeah, no surprise. I'm actually surprised Riley said as much as he did on the situation, but you could tell he was passionate about it, and he feels bad for the kid, and sounds like they're trying to support him any way they can, but it's just a waiting game. You just got to sit around and wait for your future to be decided by some judge, some court somewhere. So it is stressful, a lot of anxiety, what have you. And as you said, coming into this year, one final go around, play college football, but it just sucks if it's over like that because of a court decision. So very, very stressful for him, and you send him good thoughts if you're a USC fan, and just hope for the best, and hopefully that injunction does come through and you're able to get a key starter back, someone who we have very highly on our most important, and you get him back, and you're actually looking pretty decent on the offensive line in terms of building some depth this camp with Kayla Miller, Alani Noah, Michael Benuelos. Get DJ Wingfield back. Obviously has to shake up some roughs, but you're in a decent spot. But again, limbo, as Lincoln Riley called it, and all you can do is try to stay positive.
We'll see what happens with that. You were in the Jaden Mayava scrum, USC's starting quarterback, after practice. He's been doing some summer reading, huh, Chris?
Yeah, he's Coach Tremaine Carroll, the new director of sports performance. We've heard he's been handing out books to people.
Yep.
Quotes.
He gives a quote before every workout, and he's giving out individual books.
As we stated in our Wednesday one, trying to pour into these guys, not just football, but stuff for life outside of football, and becoming a man and not just a better football player. So obviously wants to kind of instill these opportunities to instill knowledge on themselves. And it sounds like, I don't know if everyone got a book or he's still dishing out books, but Jada Maeva got a book from Tim Grover, I believe the author is. It's about winning. I don't know the exact title, but about developing a winning edge. And obviously one of the big keys to that, as he was telling us, was kind of staying neutral. And that's obviously super important. As a quarterback, can't get too high, can't get too low, because bad things are going to happen. Good things are going to happen, but you want to stay right in the middle. Said he's been doing a lot more meditation since reading this book. That was part of his, he would meditate a little bit, before reading this book, but it's now become a bigger focal point in his preparation, in his, just off the field training, what have you. So having the right mindset, and having the right mindset for him is being more neutral and more mindful. So that's something he's been working on this offseason.
Staying neutral, that's been the big buzzword with him, the buzzwords. That's what he wants to do. I had a chance to speak with Makai Lemon. He continues to sing the praises of Prince Strawn. I continue to think that Prince Strawn is going to have a big role this year. He's someone who maybe I didn't value the way I should have in my top 30 list. That's what's fun about camp, Chris. We do these top 30 lists. We have an idea of what we think is going to happen, and then we go and we watch and we learn, and then we can adjust them. So look out for that post-fall camp re-rank. I imagine Strawn will rise up a little bit. And Lemon just seems in good spirits. And he's a guy who I have a lot of respect for. He came in with high expectations, but it's got to be so awesome when in that first season you play a little bit, play on defense, you're used a little bit. Second year, you had that breakout year, and then your third year, it's time to go, and you're established. And he's just following the path that was laid out for him. And as we all know, college football, the path can be windy. It cannot always be the path that you think. People can have these high expectations, and it doesn't always pan out. It's working out really well for Makai Lemon. He's confident, and he's feeling good heading into the season.
Very excited about Makai Lemon. All he wants to do is play football and play it well. And obviously, we've said it multiple times, he's a dog, puts in the work. He's going to give 110% effort every time he steps out on that field. So obviously a lot of expectations, a lot of hype around him. There's been some first round buzz kind of guy, probably going to be in the Blitnikoff watch list. I know watch lists aren't anything, but he has that caliber talent.
The cachet.
Yeah, got the cachet, as my colleague here has summed it up. But yeah, very excited for what Lemon and obviously what Jacoby Lane can do as a duo. And obviously defenses are going to be keying in on those guys and seeing how they handle that newfound attention, both from media and obviously from defensive coordinators that try to stop him. But I feel like Lemon's pretty, I don't want to say foolproof, but he's going to get his yards, he's going to get his catches. He just gets open, so that's why he was so successful last year.
You brought up Lane. He was still limited during the media viewing period of practice. Lincoln Riley said on Wednesday they don't expect that to be a long-term thing. Everyone was present and accounted for today at practice. The only long-term injury is Riley Wormley, the true freshman running back who came in with a knee. The last thing from Mekhi Lemon, he said he's been really impressed with the true freshman receivers. That's Corey Sims, Romero Eisen, and Tanu Hines. He said that those guys look wise beyond their years and just look more experienced than a lot of true freshmen. Chris, before we wrap up, I'll throw to you any other observations, anything else from the scrum, anyone else you talked to today. The floor is yours.
Talked a little with Devin Tompkins about the first day of pads. He said he was very excited. He loved the intensity out there. Him and the offensive line or defensive line and O-line, they had some good energy back and forth. And he said that's key. You need that in fall camp. You need that kind of butting of heads to make each other better and develop that edge. So sounds like good physicality from today's practice and a lot of good energy.
Totally agree. He's Chris Trevino. I'm Connor Morrissette. We'll be back on Monday for another edition of Instant Analysis. This is our recap of Day 3 for USC football's fall camp. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.